The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local journalism today at chly.ca/donate. Local news doesn't survive without local support.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. The future of a drop-in centre and overnight shelter in the South End was the subject of extensive discussion at a pair of council and committee meetings this past week in Nanaimo. The Hub is a facility on Nicol Street and Victoria Road that offers daytime drop-in services for people experiencing homelessness, which are run by Island Crisis Care Society. It also offers an evening shelter run by the Nanaimo Family Life Association. The Hub was announced last December. It's jointly funded by the City of Nanaimo, the federal government, and BC Housing. This week, City Council decided to continue its portion of funding for the centre through the end of next winter. 7 delegations spoke to Council about the issue last week at a Finance and Audit Committee meeting, and a further 6 delegations spoke to it at a regular Council meeting this past Monday. There were 2 repeat speakers among those delegations. The majority were residents and owners of property near the facility who reported increases in social disorder in their neighbourhood since the Hub began operations. On today's program, we're going to bring you some context around what happened at those 2 meetings and break down the discussion with Nanaimo City Councillor and South End resident Erin Hemmens. During the Finance and Audit Committee meeting last week, Christy Wood, manager of social planning with the City of Nanaimo, spoke to the original intention of the Hub.
So the original goal, just as a reminder of the Hub, was to provide a safe space for unsheltered individuals with complex needs, to connect them to housing and health services, and to reduce the presence of people sleeping and being in parks, doorways, or other public places. While staff initially hoped to establish more than one site, this hasn't been possible due to the cost and just the sheer complexity of the population that's involved. That said, without sufficient housing, healthcare, and basic needs services, people will continue to live on the streets. We know the Hub has impacted the neighbourhood, and these issues will remain in the general neighbourhood without these types of services. However, the impacts would manifest in different ways. Right now, we're seeing high demand at the Hub, especially as winter shelters have closed and other basic needs services decline. The site is averaging 52 new first-time visitors each month. Also during that meeting, Wood spoke to the difficulties city staff had in securing a location for the Hub in the lead up to its opening late last year. City staff, just as a reminder, which was in the report, city staff did work with the planning team to review 12 potential properties for a Hub. Many were unsuitable, unavailable, or landlords declined to lease to a service of this nature. One promising option at 250 Bastion Street fell through after CMHA, which is Canadian Mental Health Association Mid-Island Branch, withdrew their offer to sublease to Island Crisis Care, following concerns from other tenants. This setback unfortunately caused a 3-week delay in implementing the Hub. With winter approaching, public pressure mounting, and serious life safety concerns for unsheltered individuals, the only remaining viable option was 55 Victoria Road. A lease was secured on December 16th, just 3 days after the final service agreement between United Way BC and Island Crisis Care was signed on December 13th.
Corey Corfield with Island Crisis Care Society, which runs the daytime services at the Hub, spoke to the impact of those services during the Finance and Audit Committee meeting.
Just speaking to some of the impacts and success stories that we've seen during the daytime at the Hub. At the heart of ICCS's work is one simple thing: relationship building. The Hub is often the first place where people feel seen, safe, and heard. And from that foundation, we are seeing transformation. I want to share with you just a few small stories from the Hub. Maria and Conrad came to Nanaimo with their 2 dogs. At the Hub, they're connected with a pharmacist and a doctor. Now they are in recovery and on a housing list. They tell us, now we have hope for a better tomorrow. Miles reconnected with a nephew that he hadn't seen in years by chance just outside the Hub. He was able to buy a used car and is now returning north to work and reunite with his family. Gord, who has been sober for 6 weeks, is going back to his welding job in Red Deer. A guest with a disability who had his walker stolen multiple times was finally able to secure housing with help from the Hub and partner organizations. Riley has remained sober for 2 months and just got a job with another Nanaimo support organization. And he told us, "You inspired me to want to help people." And we have another story of an 83-year-old mother who was able to connect with her son, who's experiencing homelessness at the hub. Over peanut butter sandwiches and coffee, they play crib together and work to reconnect. The mother told us that this is the first place that they've been able to share a meal together in a place where they both feel comfortable.
During the meetings, a number of residents and property owners on Nicol Street and Victoria Road reported increased social disorder in the neighbourhood since the opening of the hub. One resident said the neighbourhood has dealt with increased violence. Another person alleged that they had property stolen, which they said authorities later located outside of the hub. Multiple delegations spoke to defecation on nearby properties. Sydney Robertson, chair of the South End Community Association, said that the hub is taking a toll on the neighbourhood.
When the hub was introduced to us in December, the intent was that having indoor space would lessen the disruptive behavior on the Victoria Road sidewalk. We expressed our worry that the site would attract more disruptive behavior to that spot, not less, and I'm sorry to have been right. I want to be clear as well that we don't really have a problem with any of the services that are happening inside the building. It's the activity that happens outside that's hurting our community, not just on the Nicol Street sidewalk, but on all the sidewalks around the hub. When people are encouraged to disperse, they only disperse so far. And we also see that the especially intense behaviors of people that we think are experiencing a break from service because of their behavior inside the hub, that is dispersed into our neighborhood. It's not safe for people inside the hub. It comes to us. We're not demanding today that the hub be shut down immediately, though I gotta say, it's tempting and it comes up. What we do demand is that if you vote to continue the operation, that it be done much, much better. We want to hear concrete strategies about finding better sites. We understand the challenges. I personally believe it's going to involve public money buying property for this to happen. We urgently need a strategy to address the numbers of people gathering near the hub, meaning we need more than one. We must need at least 3. I understand the financial constraints. We also need a strategy to mitigate the strain on nearby neighbors. And I want to just mention one suggestion that came out of the Public Safety Committee for using the parking lot, which we see as sitting empty, mostly empty much of the time. And we really wonder if there's a way to, excuse me, channeling Jagmeet Singh today. Thank you for getting my joke. We're really wondering if there's a way to use some of the parking lot space as that outdoor gathering spillover space that people obviously are wanting. Thank you.
If you could wrap up, thank you very much. Questions for the delegation? Well, I'm going to ask Councillor Hemmens' question, if I may. You've seen the 4 options that have been presented to Council. We're not restricted to that, but do you have any comment on any of those 4 options? If you don't feel like answering, I don't expect you to. Trust me, it's a challenge for everybody.
Thank you. I don't think anyone really likes any of the options. I think that if I had to choose, I would extend funding through the winter and then stop. But I would give the community absolute assurance that it's ending, because we have more people talking about moving because they just don't see an end in sight. There's a lot of fear that an extension becomes an extension becomes an extension.
Coming up, we'll hear from Nanaimo City Councillor and South End resident Erin Hemmens about the recent discussion around the hub.
Midcoast Morning is part of our nonprofit newsroom project, supported by listeners like you. Keep this program on the air by funding it today with a monthly sustaining donation at chly.ca/donate. We've got tote bags and shirts if you need an incentive.
The future of a drop-in hub supporting people experiencing homelessness generated lengthy discussion at Nanaimo City Council over the past week. Council ultimately voted to continue its portion of funding for the site through March. Between a July 16th Finance and Audit Committee meeting and a council meeting this past Monday, discussion on the matter took up just shy of 4 hours. forcing other business to be deferred to future meetings. I spoke about the deliberations with Nanaimo City Councillor and South End resident Erin Hemmens. Councillor Erin Hemmens, thank you very much for coming down to the CHLY studio. You're a member of City Council. You're also a resident of the South End. There was a tension between those two roles maybe at a pair of City Council meetings this past week where a lot of oxygen was taken up by discussion around the Hub, a drop-in centre on Nicol Street and Victoria Road. What did you take away from all of the delegations at those meetings?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, so what I took from those delegations is that the South End is really struggling under the concentration of services in their neighbourhood, and that the Hub itself has kind of pushed that past the tipping point. So what I witnessed from Chair Sydney Robertson of South End Community Association is a real bone weariness from having to continue to have these conversations, and from, I think, this sense that the South End is somehow where we can sacrifice. The South End Community Association is one of, if not the strongest community association in the city, and it's built on, kind of a working class ethic of people volunteering for their community. And I would suggest that CICA has been incredibly graceful and incredibly compassionate about the concentration of services in their neighborhood. But the Hub, I really like that framing. It took up a lot of oxygen. The Hub is simply not an appropriate model for a neighborhood. That's what I took away from it. The intentions behind it are good. The desire to do good by everyone there is apparent, but it's just not working.
And so coming out of that meeting and coming out of those pair of meetings, first at the committee level, the recommendation that was adopted this week at City Council was that Council is going to continue to fund the Hub through to the end of March of next year. Can you tell me about your decision-making, your thought process there?
Sure. So I think I just back it up. And what we know is that Nanaimo has one of the highest unsheltered rates per capita of anywhere in the province, which means that we have more people sleeping outside, sleeping rough, having no access to shelter than anywhere else in the province. It's a problem. So the Hub was seen as a way to take the edge off of that. And I think in some ways it is arguably doing that. I'm sorry, Joe, can you ask the question again?
Well, specifically the decision to fund it through the end of March. What was your thought process as a councillor voting on that?
Right, thank you. That's why I was speaking of the deficit, is that any service that we take offline is a real blow to the community of service providers who are trying to provide a service to a really difficult population. So my rationale specifically was about, I worry with immediate closure, with no plans in place, the very difficult population that we see on Nicol Street will bleed into the downtown. And they will go to Diana Krall Plaza, and they will go to Port Place Mall. And there's an argument to be made for keeping people who have high needs of the system close together. I've always thought that we should have some sort of managed encampment model. You know, it doesn't need to be fancy, but a place where we can put folks who are in similar places on their journey, whether that's sobriety or not, but put them in a place that keeps them safe and keeps health services through a single point of entry, food services, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is we simply don't have that. We don't have the resources to do that. We have over 1,000 people. So my rationale around the Hub and keeping it open for the winter was to try to take the edge off of that specific issue. Keep that place open where people can access services. And most importantly, give the neighborhood an end date and some means of feeling like they have a bit of say, even though, you know, we're going to keep it open until the end of March, but really assuring them that that building is not a permanent location, really assuring them that we're going require of the providers their availability to the neighborhood. I have a motion coming, a notice of motion coming about increasing clean team services, increasing litter pickup, et cetera. So really trying to support the neighborhood through the next 6 months, acknowledging just how hard that's going to be. And it could be worse if the hub weren't open.
Is that end of March date, is that a firm end date in your mind? If this comes up again and it's time to vote, you would be in favor of closing it even if there's no alternative location?
Yeah. Sydney came up during question period at the last council meeting and asked us specifically, which I think the mayor tried to duck out of, because of course it's hard to, you can't cement yourself into a decision that isn't in front of you yet. But Sydney certainly has my assurances, and I know a number of my other colleagues, to say even push comes to shove in March, this is not the right place. This right now is about keeping people off, as we know that winter's coming, off the street. But in March there has to be something different.
You talked about a notice of motion you're planning on bringing to City Council. What do you think are the mitigation efforts that could be undertaken over the next few months?
Increased CSO presence, which we know is happening. Increased clean team presence, which again we know is happening. And Joe, I need to really be clear about this. No one is not doing their job. No one is in this, I think, with poor intent. We simply don't have the resources to deal with the issues that we're facing. I've personally found city staff very responsive to immediate neighbor concerns. I know clean team resources have been directed there based on city staff keeping a very close eye on what's happening. Yeah, I don't want us to come away from this conversation thinking that this is somehow solvable if someone were just doing something differently. Everyone is doing what they can within their means. It's just simply not enough.
There was a point in the meeting where Sydney Robertson of the South End Community Association was speaking, and you talked to her about how you told the story of how you first met and you were doing plays together, and that's not something that you're talking about all the time with her now. And I'm wondering if you could tell me about that.
Sure. So Sika's known for its community development. Sika really took the broken window theory, which is that if you want to clean up a neighborhood, you reclaim the neighborhood. They took that theory to heart about 20 years ago, and they're powerhouses. They're amazing. Sika puts on the Miners Heritage Picnic. Sika does litter pickups. Sika does all sorts of community development things. And they continue to do those things. But what I observe, and what Sydney confirmed for me, is that this is taking up a lot of oxygen in the room. And I would say to you, over the last year, rather than talking about those community development things, this is the topic of conversation that I'm having with Sika. And that's really tough. That's really tough to see a community organization that is founded upon vibrant neighborhoods and neighbor relations. It's hard to see them being beat down by this. And they are. I've never seen the neighbors that I saw at the podium express themselves like that. It's tough. You can see it. You can see the wear and tear on people emotionally. And the provision of services shouldn't be at their expense.
Do you think that there's anything that, the rest of Nanaimo, other neighborhoods in the community, can do, individuals in the community who maybe live in other neighborhoods? Is there anything outside of the box that you think people could do to help the South End out?
Oh, what a beautiful question that I'm not prepared for. I mean, how wonderful would it be to see people come together and do a community pickup in the neighborhood with other neighborhood associations pitching in? And I think about that with Newcastle, who went through their own version of hell. And I know Sika reached out to them. That kind of informal networking happens of what have you tried? What were you successful with? I love that. And if the neighborhood associations in Nanaimo surrounded Sika in this, that would be really beautiful. Yeah.
part of this issue is the tension between, like, even some of the people who were coming and they were sharing like really traumatic experiences that they had. There wasn't a consensus. Certainly some of the delegations said just shut this down immediately. But even some people who had experienced really serious stuff, they were saying, you know, I get it. We need these services. They were asked by pretty much everyone who spoke was asked, like, we have 4 options. Which one would you support? They had a tough time deciding. A number of them said, like, let's keep it going until the end of March. I guess I can support that as long as there's light at the end of the tunnel. Just what did you make of that kind of tension, that people who shared that traumatic stuff still kind of saying that they got it?
Unbelievable. Just like unbelievable compassion and grace. And it was their lead that I followed. It was Sydney's lead and Les Gerard's lead. These folks who said, oh my God, this is awful, this is horrible, and we are white-knuckling it here, and we know that we can do another 6 months with some support. But we acknowledge that just shutting this down tomorrow could likely invite more chaos for more people. So I really appreciated those voices, and I struggled really hard, obviously because the voices who were arguing for shut the service down now have been traumatized. Like, there's some deep wounds there, and to not be able to support them in that was really difficult for me. But like I said, I think my rationale was the end date, being very clear that I will not support this being in the neighborhood past March, and I will fight with my colleagues on that. I don't think I'd have to fight them hard, but I will fight with them on it. Using that 6 months to try to find a new space, using that 6 months to try to leverage provincial and federal partners to try to come to the table with us. But again, Joe, we go back to that reality of we have 1,000 people, and short of opening up, you know, something the size of Oliver Woods and putting cots in it, we have a long road in front of us around figuring out what this is going to look like and where these folks should go.
I also wanted to ask you a little bit about maybe the media perception of this whole issue. I know a lot of coverage in the press was out there ahead of last week's meeting, a lot of coverage about this proposal to do some upgrades to the infrastructure around City Hall, including a fence that was unanimously voted down by members of City Council, like right after this discussion about the hub. What did you make of that whole incident, and just how do you think it's important that this gets talked about in the public sphere?
This being the fence?
This being the fence, I guess, visible poverty, social disorder in Nanaimo.
Well, I mean, I think it's critical because it's front and center for everyone. Like, I walked, down through City Hall to come here today, and there were burn marks on the front step when I was leaving, and folks that I had to ask to miss this, like, so I could move through the stairs, which doesn't bother me in the least. Everyone was very accommodating, but it's forefront of mind for people. It's everywhere, especially downtown and South End. So, of course, we should be having community conversations about it. In terms of the media response, I really appreciated the comments of my colleague, Councillor Eastmere, around the media running with something before it was even a story. The headlines intimated that a decision had already been made. And the truth was that we had a staff report coming to us that no one had asked for, and that if anyone cared to take the temperature of the people who were making the decisions would have understood that that was about to be a unanimous decision. But it paints us in this wicked light, which I think the media loves. And it's not just about Nanaimo, it's headlines, right? Like, you're in media, you get it. But I was actually chatting with a resident yesterday, and I said to him, it's not the worst case scenario that we're in the media for this stuff. This attention, while uncomfortable, is actually a good lens for us to see potential change through. It's okay that we're open about our struggles. And hopefully that commits us to co-creating solutions along with provincial government, along with the federal government, along with the service providers, along with the community, all of that. We couldn't do that unless we had the conversations. The conversations are chunky and they're hard, but they need to happen. I wish both of those things weren't on one single agenda, but such is life. Yeah.
Speaking of the agenda, there were a few things that were deferred because of the amount of time, the discussions both last Wednesday and this past Monday. The discussions, the delegations on the hub took up so much time, including a fairly substantial piece about building out Nanaimo. That has been deferred to a later council meeting, with Dale Lindsay, the CAO of Nanaimo, suggesting it might set us back a few weeks worth of work. Like, what do you think it's important for people to know about that side of things?
About the capital stuff?
Yes, or just the fact that the capital stuff is being delayed, months of meeting time or weeks of staff work as a consequence of how significant this issue is.
Yeah, there's no question. This is a drain on resources. I think that's what the mayor keeps talking about, is that this is a drain on resources. We now have a team of social planners, whereas, I think our first social planner came in under a decade ago. So we have a whole department devoted to this. We have clean teams and CSOs and increased RCMP resources. There is no question that this issue is taking up city staff time, energy, and resources. There's no way around that. When things get bumped, we're strategic about that. That conversation about capital is just a conversation, and Mr. Lindsay was right. There's no harm or risk in pushing it out a bit. But I do think it is interesting and something that we continually need to share with the provincial government, the federal government, that this takes up so much airtime. And it's in many ways, diverting attention from the things that we really need to get done. Not to say that we don't need to do this as well, but really the things that we're technically responsible for are being pushed back because we're so focused on this issue that we're just trying to put a Band-Aid on, because we cannot tax homes to take care of this issue, not in the ways that the province and the feds can. We could, but I would hate to see what the property tax increase would look like then.
Is there anything else you think it's important for people to know about this issue right now?
Just always, my ask of people, always, if you have questions about things you're reading in the media, call your city councillor. We're super available. Our phone numbers are online. Send us an email. It's hard to be in a position of decision making, and you're battling with people's misunderstandings because they've read an article in the newspaper and they're coming in hot rather than coming in curious. And when we're dealing with such a vast issue, I feel like curiosity is how we're going to get through it. So democracy is a two-way street, and I would just want people to participate and call us and talk to us and watch the meetings. And if you can't and you don't have time, which is totally reasonable, just be curious and ask. Like, hey, I read this article. That didn't sound great. Tell me about that. Yeah, that's what I would love.
Councillor Erin Hemmens, thank you so much for coming down to CHLY.
John. Thank you.
Nanaimo City Councillor Erin Hemmens speaking about Council's recent decision to continue funding the Hub Drop-In Centre on Victoria Road and Nicol Street through the end of next March. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and RB Frew is our technical advisor. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
This program gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.